Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today I'm giving you my first impressions on the kit of Colleen Wing. Now, we don't know everything about this character because we still don't know her stats. We also don't know the rest of the team's kit and how they're going to fit together. So, this is really my initial impressions based on the blog post that we just had, telling us all of the details of her kit. And there's a lot of interesting detail here that I think is important. I will have videos out on patch day with all the details. I'm an envoy now, so I will have all of that stuff for you. But I want to give you my impressions here because I think that we can tell quite a bit just from looking at the kit. And I'm going to keep it to what we know and get right down to business in terms of whether this is a team that you should be interested in, whether or not this is a character you should be interested in based on what we know today. All right, so I'm going to move past all of this stuff about her backstory and just say here are the bottom line, top level stuff. So first of all, I like that she's a brawler because there's frankly not that many top brawlers in the game compared to some of the other classes, which means that you're more likely to have your ISO sitting around that you could throw on a brawler, so that's good. High health damage and focus. This tells me she's probably gonna, we're gonna see this power creep, super OP stats. Well, we don't know, but that would just be my guess. We've been seeing a lot of crazy stats lately. And instead of, going through all this, I'll just go right to the kit. Although I will say one thing that I want to focus on here when I'm talking about this is how good of a solo character is Colleen Wing? Because, let's just say she's released first and you have to make a decision on whether to buy her or how much to invest in her. What I want to help you understand is, does she rely on her team to be good, or is she a character you're going to start seeing in all game modes, that sort of thing, right? So first of all, let's look at the traits. One thing that we'll need to look out for since she's city is, what is her cost in terms of uniques for DD4. I'll keep an eye out on that. I always update my DD4 infographic based on that. So, really whether she has any value there is going to depend on whether she's very low cost. The fact that she's skill, that is, people are sometimes looking to use those uniques, but I'm skeptical that of whether or not she's going to be a character that you are going to want to bring to DD4. I'll get more into why I believe that is later. The skill is also an interesting choice here. She could have been Mystic. The fact that she's skill means that she might have some value in the skill nodes of the Doom Raid. Skeptical of that as well, and I'll explain why in just a moment. So let's take a look exactly at her kit. So in her basically what she's doing is she's going to attack the primary target for a good multiplier on her damage and apply 2 bleed. This is a character that relies a lot on bleeds. You know what that means? That means T4s to really maximize the character because the T4 ability gives kind of a higher multiplier on those bleeds. So unfortunately, potentially as a character you're going to need to put T4s on. This is all tied to war defense. And let me just say this right up front about war defense teams. The only people who should be going hard on war defense teams are people who are in the end game, who are very focused on war as a game mode. In other words, I'm in a diamond level alliance. We're going to be building up these war defenses because we're all in the end game. We're trying to get some leg up on our opponents. And so, you're going to want to have, your big heroes for hire war defense team. And it doesn't matter what level of war you're at. You could be in Platinum 1 or Gold 4. If you're like, look, I have completed the Dark Dimensions and I just love war and I love seeing those defense wins. Great. If you want to win in your war, you will have a short-term advantage by building up a war defense team. But one thing I will just tell you is Scopely has essentially a pattern here. They introduce an insane war defense team. It's really powerful for a month or 2 or 3, and then they slowly power creep it out by introducing counters, right? We've seen that with Marauders, for example. It was amazing for a while. People were having to use Ultron plus all these hybrid teams to beat it, or Black Order or something. And then they slowly introduced counters. And now you can beat it with Shadowland or X Factor or whatever. So, in 6 months, then it becomes war defense, and then 6 months after that, then they've introduced enough other characters that those defenses fall off entirely. So what I would just say to you is, you know, this is more of a end game, finished with Dark Dimension, game mode, sort of thing for people who care about war versus raids or something else. All right, off of war defense, focusing just on how she is solo first. All she really does is attack and apply bleed. That's all she does with her basic attack if she's solo and, let's say, skill raid. And then we'll go back and look at all this other stuff in a moment. If she's solo, all she does in her special is attack and apply bleed. If she's not on her team, she doesn't get all this extra piercing. She does gain deflect, which I do like, and it will synergize with her passive. But all the rest of this is heroes for hire, war defense, if Misty's an ally. Her ultimate, if she's solo, all it does is attacks all the enemies for 300 piercing. That's a lot of damage because piercing is very good. It bypasses armor, low energy cost, so it's going to be up quite a bit. That's a good thing. And if a target's a protector, she attacks that target for 400% piercing plus apply 3 bleed instead. That's really good. So she could be a taunt killer sort of thing. That could be very valuable, but only for certain taunts. Remember, for example, Bishop is not a protector. And then apply heal block for 2 turns to all enemies. That's very good. Could be valuable in certain game modes, against certain enemies. And then gaining 1,000% extra focus, we like that. This is one of the key. This is a big part of her kit that is not, tied to the team or tied to war defense. And then there's a lot of stuff here that's war defense. So, this is a heroes for hire. This is on the team. This is not. So on turn, gain deflect. This part's on the team. So she will get deflect at her turns. She does get deflect from one of her moves. And then when she has deflect, she gains 100% chance to counterattack and 20% block. So that's very good. Survivable, lots of counterattacks, kind of like a Taskmaster. Taskmaster is there. Puts out bleeds, puts out damage. But the bottom line here, and the reason I went, and I wanted to start with looking at her solo, and you can see here with the piercing as well. She's a high damage type character, supposedly. But are you going to use her in the skill nodes of the Doom raid? You're only going to use her there if her damage is so dang high that she's like a Black Bolt sort of thing, right? She's like a character you bring just for damage. Otherwise, you won't. But she's got great mechanics on the team. She's got great mechanics for war defense. Let's look at those briefly. But, that is where I really see her value more likely to be. And that's, by the way, her damage is also why I'm skeptical in DD4 of her value, because in DD4 you don't bring characters like Black Bolt, right, for straight damage. You're basically trying to bring characters that have percentage-based damage or apply debuffs or that sort of thing. So let's look at her now from a team-oriented perspective. On war defense, when this character performs a counterattack or assist, apply 3 bleed instead. That's great. That means she's going to be a striker on war defense. That's what they're trying to get you to do here. Her special on war defense. So first of all, this is huge. 30% piercing for each heroes for hire ally. That means 120% piercing on top of 400% damage and the bleed. This is an extremely high, multiplier in this. We don't know her base damage, but assuming that they're accurate when they say it's high damage, let's say she's top 10, top 15 damage stat, this is going to be really nasty. On war defense, this attack targets the enemy with the highest damage instead of the primary target, ignoring taunt and stealth, and gains 1,000% extra focus. What this tells me is that you're really going to need to think about who your highest damage is. It may be that a Hydra team with Hydra Grenadier, let's say, is the highest damage. And Red Skull, like the Hydra 3.0 team that I showed off, might be a good way of countering this team. We'll have to see. We don't know what the rest of the kits are like. The fact that, the attack is undodgeable with Misty is also very good. Same thing with the basic. That, that'll be on the team. That's a good feature. And that'll, by the way, really nerfs teams like X-Force that rely a lot on dodge. And then on her ultimate, this is the one that's really mostly about her solo. This is the only change here. But let's get to the passive. The passive says, on the end of any Heroes for Hire ally turn, 25% to attack the most injured non-summon enemy for 200% damage and 30% piercing for each Heroes for Hire ally. So it's 120% piercing. So that's a very nice multiplier and a lot of extra out of turn damage attacks, which is awesome. It's sort of like how, for example, you have an X-Men, you have all these assist nows that occur. You also have, it's almost like in a way like an Iceman or Black Bolt where you have these out of turn. When they're not taking a turn, they have damage, and it's a very powerful type of ability. And on War Defense, this always attacks, so she's going to be attacking at every turn. She is the main source of damage for the team on War Defense, most likely. We don't know the rest of the team, but that certainly seems likely here. And then here, on enemy death, if this character has 2 or more Heroes for Hire allies, apply offense down to all enemies. This is very underrated. This is 50% less damage, so very high survivability. Also reduces focus. So on enemy death, this is kind of like how White Tiger, gets on a roll when she has a kill shot or when an enemy's killed. But this is, by the way, any enemy killed, doesn't have to be killed by Colleen. And then on War Defense, on Spawn, she gets 2 charged. So this is a special mechanic she has. So if she gets 2 charged, you have to get her below 50% health to lose a charge. If she has a charge remaining, she revives. So she's going to revive twice unless you can get rid of the charges by getting her below 50% health. So this really is a way of preventing her from being one-shot. If you try to one-shot her, it'll take two shots. You'll kill her once. And actually, it's interesting. A one shot won't reduce the charge. So if you get her down to, let's say, 1% health, she'll heal right back up and get death proof and everything. So you really kind of have to get her below 50% health once. She loses a charge, and then she does this heal. Then you have to get her below again, and then you kill her. Now, one way you can deal with this, of course, is use Silver Surfer. He's the only character that removes charges. But boy, if you have to use Silver, if this team requires Silver Surfer to be countered well, that's a fantastic result. He's the best character in the game right now. So that would be great for Alliance War. That'll force teams to take Surfer off of defense. Very interesting. And then, of course, the 30% piercing, by the way, applies not just for herself, but for her allies. We don't know the rest of the team yet. We know Misty Knight will be on it. And the rumor is that the 3 remaining members of the Defenders that don't have a home, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist, are going to be reworked and added to this team. I don't know that for sure yet, but I'll be able to reveal all of that on patch day as part of the Envoy videos. But for right now, what I would say about this character is, looks fantastic on her team. I'm skeptical of whether she's going to have solo value. Skeptical whether she's going to have value in skill raids or with DD4 and DD4. This is a character I would recommend only for in-game players who really are willing to invest in a pure War Defense team. Alright guys, so if you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, check out our Discord, lots of great discussions there. That's linked below, and also check out our Twitch stream, also linked below.